Formula One is back in the United States and Circuit of the Americas is our stage. Both championships may be sealed, but there is much still at stake. A certain Daniel Ricciardo returns, and as ever, everything is bigger in Texas. Welcome to the weekend warm-up. Hello and welcome to the paddock here in Austin, Texas, and welcome to an elite ensemble for this weekend warm-up here ahead of the United States Grand Prix. Lawrence Barretto, Buxton and James Hinchcliffe returning to the F1 TV family once again. Hinch, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing very well. Better to be here, be back with you guys. Excited for the weekend as always.
It's going to be a good one, isn't it? Lawrence, how are you?
Really, really good. I love Austin. I love coming back to this city. I love coming back to this venue. The fans here are the best.
Will?
Yeah, it's wonderful to be back in the paddock. Star-studded paddock today. Adam Driver walking around, Michael Mann. And I've just seen Drew Barrymore, who I think I've been a little bit in love with since I was 15 years old.
Doing okay?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm really not. I kind of, yeah, a bit starstruck, really.
We have quite a starstruck studio. You're pretty starstruck at the thought of Ryan Reynolds coming this weekend as well.
I heard a rumor that he was coming, and he doesn't know we're best friends yet, but I can't wait to tell him. It's going to be interesting for him to learn that.
Well, do get in touch. Hashtag F1 Live. If in fact you see any celebrities walking past us, we'll be celeb spotting throughout the weekend, of course. As ever at the US Grand Prix, it's a pretty star-studded affair. Get in touch with your thoughts across the weekend as well. We're here in Austin, and I think I'm going to have to cover this off pretty early on. You can probably see, I mean, I'm looking at our return vision here. Our shoes are pretty bright. Will is also holding a pair himself as well. I'm going to leave Lawrence Barretto to explain what's going on here, Lawrence.
Well, this is pretty standard, obviously fair for me to wear bright shoes. So
Yeah,
there's nothing shocking here. But it's based on the fact that Jolyon Palmer set us a challenge to design our own shoes. We've all taken very different approaches to this. I've had a lot of grief today because apparently there's not a lot of effort that's gone into my shoes.
I think lazy has been one word used to describe them. Basic has been another. I think considering you are the shoe connoisseur, there is quite a lot of disappointment around your efforts, Lawrence, because they are just one colour. And can I say, when I did hold them earlier, a lot of the pink residue came off of my hands, which is they're not great. Imagine if it was raining.
Hang on, you call me a shoe connoisseur, I appreciate that. I'm a designer, but I've never painted a pair of shoes.
You have people to, don't you?
This is like next level. I don't know what you're talking about, Laura. Let's move on from that. Anyway, I genuinely feel like of all of the shoes here, these are the only ones I would wear, so I'm happy. I'm happy.
That's rude.
That's just a personal opinion thing.
These are Jolyon Palmer's efforts, and they are, of course, Jolyon's helmet design.
That's lovely.
Which I think is really cool.
And we should
really
say
nice.
that Jolyon fancies himself as a bit of an artist, like an amateur
Yes,
artist.
he has his own artwork up on the walls of his
does.
house.
As in, yeah, he painted his own art. Went to a gallery, decided he didn't like anything in the gallery, so went back home and painted his own.
He thought he could do it cheaper, so he did. Will,
yes.
now can I just say, everyone else has sort of made some kind of effort. Will has gone, as ever in the Will Buxton world, overboard. Will?
So 30 years ago, this weekend, Ligier ran my favourite livery of all time in Formula One. They ran it for 2 races in Australia and Japan, and it's that livery, the art car from 1993. Martin Brundle drove the car, so I put his helmet stripes on the back, and I got him to autograph them this morning. And we're going to auction all of the shoes at the end of the week for the Grand Prix Trust, which looks after former members of the paddock who fall on hard times.
I'm sure yours will probably raise some money. Lawrence, I'm not sure.
I think Lawrence should come with a health warning.
They should.
I think he should just donate to the fund and not even put them up for auction. Just give the money.
Wow.
They're all right.
I like Hinch's.
Yeah, Hinch, and actually this is a real effort as well. Go on, explain.
Yes, well, long story short, I had to do this. I started about 1:30 this morning, finished by about 3. I got, the Texas stars, a lot of red, white, and blue. Got Austin written across the back of them, right? So
nice.
It was done with Sharpie over paint. That was my my chosen medium there. But I think they turned Air Force Ones with a little bit of Texas flair. It's got like the rubber boot look there. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, considering I did it this morning.
And yours are
I'm
great,
impressed.
little
Look,
sort of
I
Paul
knew that mine were
Ricard.
going to be messy, right? So I've made them messy. Producer Joe is beside herself and says, we need to stop talking shoes.
That's
but
rich coming from Joe.
she loves
the
shoes.
shoes.
Anyway, we are going to go back now to Formula One, and we're going to look back on a couple of weeks ago, and that was the Qatar Grand Prix. And my goodness me, what a weekend we had there. Hinch is stepping up to the plate to do our 60-second recap.
All
Here
right.
we go.
Well, sprint weekend, we can't do anything without saying first that Piastri got his first win in that sprint weekend, but then in the initial start of the Grand Prix, all the drama was Mercedes turn 1. It was very Barcelona 2016. Lewis around the outside, didn't make it work, took responsibility for it, sent Russell all the way to the back, which actually set up for an incredible comeback drive on a weekend where the stints were limited to 18 laps because of an issue with the Pirelli tires. Then drivers were flat out the whole time. Some issues for Fernando Alonso. Some great comeback drives, though, from not just Russell. Perez was trying to get up there as well. Obviously, Verstappen dominated, but it really was the McLaren show. Piastri second, his best result. Norris third. Like we said, it's the Aston Martin's not having a great weekend all around, but I thought it was a great race. Physicality was a huge issue. It was super hot. A lot of drivers complained of that by the end of it, but at the end of the day, it was all Max. But again, McLaren with a huge effort as well.
Lovely stuff,
That was
Hinch.
great.
That was a great recap. I like that you gave your own opinion on the race rather than just reflecting what happened. I appreciate that kind of recap. I loved it.
Well, I
And
didn't get to do it live, so I had to do it now.
Exactly, and you didn't see the pictures either. So that was a very good effort. Thank you very much. And of course, as you mentioned, the grueling conditions and the driver efforts as well were truly astounding last time out. It is due to be hot this weekend, but certainly by no means the temperatures and the humidity that we were seeing in Qatar last time out. Now, Hinch, you mentioned that Mercedes crash between George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. Of course, immediately on the race radio, they were both blaming each other, as we so often hear racing drivers do in the heat of the moment. Afterwards, Lewis Hamilton stepped away and obviously said, look, I acknowledge this is my fault. How did you see it, and how do you see this then playing out in their dynamic of their relationship moving forwards?
I think I'm going to go to the second part of that question first. We already saw Lewis go up to George after the race, give him a hug, say, sorry, bud, my bad. And I don't think there's any other way to see it. Once you watch the replay, George had nowhere to go. He had Max to the inside. Both Mercedes got great launches. Lewis was on that softer tire, tried to kind of do the Hail Mary around the outside. There just wasn't enough room. So it was on him. He put his hand up, which you always have to respect a racing driver for doing. I think they're going to be just fine from here on out.
Great stuff. And Will, of course, we saw Lewis Hamilton crossing a live track, and that was initially dealt with, wasn't it? But now revisited by the FIA, and in the words of the FIA, because of his role model status. So what's happening here?
Yeah, I found that quite troubling. I know a lot of people did. The fact that he seemed to be singled out for his role model status, and it reminded me of back in 2012 when Romain Grosjean was banned for a race because he'd taken drivers out who were competing for a championship. There's either one rule that covers everybody. You can't have a situation where people are singled out. Now, Lewis was asked about that today, and he actually defended the FIA and said, actually, I think it was just really poorly worded, because having spoken to the FIA, it's not that I'm a role model, it's that we're all role models. And there was a horrible accident in a karting race that very same weekend on the track, somebody crossing a live track. So he knows, and all the drivers know, that they are role models for the younger generations of drivers, and crossing a live track is an absolute no-no. One thing we do know from the World Motorsport Council as of today is that drivers will now face up to $1 million fines. It was capped way beneath that, but now any driver infractions, it could be crossing a live track or anything worse, can lead to a $1 million fine.
Good to get clarification, though,
Yep.
certainly from Lewis Hamilton there. Lawrence, coming to you, we saw a brilliant recovery drive from George Russell after that incident into P4. We saw the physical effects the race was having on him as well, lifting his visor and directing airflow into his face as well due to the heat. What did you make of that, and what does it say about the driver with the last 5 races to go?
Well, you could see how angry he was to start with how that all unfolded, and it kind of lit a fire, didn't it, in terms of when he was fighting back through the field. I think that's why he was so frustrated, because he had so much pace around that circuit. He knew he could be in with a shot of a podium at the very least, and for him to then get that all kind of seen tumbling down at that first corner really frustrated with him. I think he's doing really well in that Grand Prix, and that hasn't always been the case this year. I think Lewis is kind of overshadowed by the very fact that Lewis is fighting for P2 in the Drivers' Championship. George is way down in P8. So it just kind of shows the gulf between them, at least on the points scoring. So for him to get a good result towards the end of the year, really strong.
Yeah, and of course they'll be looking to 2024 as well. A big upgrade package coming for Mercedes here, which will undoubtedly shape part of that development heading into next season, where they'll hope to be a little bit more competitive. They've still got P2 in both standings, though, to seal off. Now, this feels a bit like deja vu, and it's brilliant, I think, that we're here in Austin as well, one of his favourite races. Daniel Ricciardo is back again. He returns once again, Hinch, from, of course, that crash in which he broke his hand. As a driver coming back from injury, how much of a challenge is this weekend going to be for him?
He hasn't been out that long in the grand scheme of things, and I think in a lot of ways, as much as drivers want to get back as quickly as possible, he was probably a little bit thankful he wasn't around last weekend because it was such a difficult race physically, and obviously you want to be in peak form when you come back into the race car. So we know how much he loves the States, we know how much he loves it here, how much America loves Dan Ricciardo, and so I think it's kind of appropriate. This is where he's coming back, but I'm sure that if he's made the decision to come back, he's fit, he's ready to go, he's been in the sim, he's been doing demos here in the States, he's ready to go.
Yeah, he's done that demo run in Nashville as well, hasn't he? And we haven't mentioned just yet, but of course this is a sprint weekend as well, our 5th of the year, and our first back-to-back too. So he's got very little time to get accustomed to that AlphaTauri, but an AlphaTauri that has seen some real improvement. Let's hear now from Daniel Ricciardo on the eve of his return.
Daniel, it's been 5 races. Welcome back. How are you? How's the hand?
I'm well. I'm very happy to be back. Thanks for asking. The hand's good. And yeah, just want to get back to it now. So it's nice. People ask me about it. It's nice, but I've also answered a lot of questions about it. So it's good.
Look, one more then. How tough has the recuperation been?
Well, I would say tougher than I thought, but I'm probably a bit of a wuss as well. So maybe not tougher than I thought. But yeah, I think it was really just when the accident happened and we were aware what bone broke, they seemed fairly okay with that bone in terms of, it's a relatively easy one to kind of, let's say, fix. But then, when we got the surgery done in Spain, we got further checks done, and it was just the break was a lot worse than it first seemed. So I think that's what took a lot longer for the recovery and probably made it a little more painful for myself.
And what about the car? It's changed quite a lot while you've been out of it. What are you expecting?
Yeah, I've done, I saw, so I went out to Singapore and where they had, some pretty big updates, and that was actually a pretty positive weekend for the team. So that looked good, and drivers were saying that they could feel some good differences. So I'm expecting a car a little stronger than where I left it. But I mean, it's going to be the 3rd race I've done this year. So I'm still very, very green for this season. But in saying that, I'm not using that as an excuse. It's just, everything kind of still feels new to me.
Do you think Liam Lawson's done a good job?
Yes, one does. He did a very good job.
Excellent. We'll leave it there.
There you go. Short and sweet from Daniel Ricciardo and Liam Lawson there. But yes, he did do a very good job, of course, scoring points in 11th place as well. We say goodbye to Liam Lawson. He will be coming on our pre-qualifying show, actually, which we're delighted to hear. But he did do a brilliant job standing in. Now Daniel's point of reference has to be Yuki Tsunoda and indeed his own metrics. But Liam certainly laid down a marker.
He did. I've seen him walking through the paddock today. He was walking in one direction wearing a Red Bull shirt, and by the time he was coming back, he was wearing an AlphaTauri shirt. As he's here, as the reserve. Look, Liam did a grand job. You never really see drivers complimenting each other, particularly not when one has been taking your seat for the last few races. It's going to be fascinating to see how Daniel fares in these 5 remaining races. He needed much longer, I think, in that car to really get himself back up to speed, and for us to see whether the Daniel that comes back is the Daniel of old or the Daniel that left McLaren at the end of last year. How much has this half a year out of the car helped to rebuild him and get him back into a place where he's enjoying his racing again? Because I think that's what we all want to see. It does, of course, ramp up the pressure on Sergio Perez. And we say it week in, week out, and I'm sorry that we do have to keep on saying it, but we arrive here and the headlines are still around Sergio Perez, and even whether he'll be in that Red Bull seat in 2024. The team keep protesting that he will be, and yet we keep hearing that there's a 5-race sort of moratorium on him, that if he doesn't get it together, that he will be out of the seat. It's a really fascinating time down here. And Daniel Ricciardo isn't in that seat out of charity. Red Bull don't do charity. He's there for one reason and one reason alone, which is to see if he is good enough to go back into Red Bull at some point in the future. That's it. It's that simple.
Yeah, he has the AlphaTauri seat confirmed, of course, alongside Yuki Tsunoda, but you're right, that second Red Bull seat is still rumbling on. That story around Perez and the slump of form he's experiencing, the issues he's having at the moment, certainly through qualifying, is definitely one of the stories of the paddock. If you do have Liam Lawson in your F1 fantasy team, by the way, it will be a free transfer to take him out. You can leave him in if you want, but of course he won't be scoring any points. Lawrence, coming to you on Perez then. These are a really important trio of races for him to turn this form around. He's under so much pressure, isn't he? The rumours were swirling since Qatar. He scored just 1 point from that with the DNF in the sprint and then just 10th in the Grand Prix. And the rumour mill's been in full swing, hasn't it? Certainly online.
Yeah, I had a chat to him actually. We'll get to see that later in the weekend, a bit of a long-form chat, just to kind of get an understanding of what's going through his mind at the minute. He seems to be coping with the pressure reasonably well because it's been there for such a long time, but he knows he's got to turn it around in these last 5 races like Will was hinting at. I think if he loses P2 in the Drivers' Championship to Lewis, I think that's where the pendulum will swing quite significantly, because that Mercedes has been nowhere really this year. It's never really been in contention for a win, and yet it's beaten a Red Bull that's gone and won almost every Grand Prix this year. So I think these last few races, it helps that he's here. He's going to have so much support from Mexico just over the border, the Mexican Grand Prix obviously next time out as well. But I think he is starting to feel it. What I know is clear is he still loves driving. So I don't think he wants to quit. I don't get the impression that he wants to retire anytime soon. I think he wants to prove to everyone else that he's got what it takes. The question is, has he got what it takes to stay in the Red Bull seat? Or will we see him elsewhere on the grid in the future if he does stick around?
We'll have to wait and see. But look, Hugh Bird during that Qatar Grand Prix saying the track limits violations are hurting the race. Christian Horner saying as well that we need him firing on all cylinders. So, vocally now we are hearing from the team that Sergio Perez is indeed under pressure. We can now hear from him.
Checo, a big couple of weeks for you. You've got Austin, home country just over the border, then obviously your home race. So how excited are you about the prospect of almost 2 home races?
Yeah, really excited. These 2 coming weekends are the most important for me. I want to do really well around these places, so looking forward massively to it.
When you kind of look at what you need to achieve over these next couple of weekends, it's been a difficult run of yours. Have you found some solutions to why life's been a bit difficult for you guys?
I was in the simulator and we understood a lot of things, especially from the last 2 events, things that we were doing that were not right for us, and we have a lot more idea on which direction we gotta be taking.
Is it kind of setup directions? Is it things that you're not starting the weekend in the right direction, or is it just little things that you're just not? What kind of thing is it?
Yeah, I think through the weekend we're not taking the right directions. We were not taking the right directions on the setup, and I think it was quite obvious when you look back and sit back and look at things that we were doing. So I really hope that in the coming weekends we can transform our form.
Best of luck. Thank you.
Sergio Perez then under pressure, both here in the US and indeed heading into his home race in Mexico next weekend in this very important triple header to round off the season. I have magically replaced Lawrence, Will and Hinch with our newest and very exciting F1 podcast host, Christian Hugel, and Katie Osborne join me now for F1 Explains. Just explain what F1 Explains is for me, Christian.
You've done it rather well. We explain Formula One, fundamentally. That's what we do. Yeah, we have listeners from all over the world who send us questions. Why? It's f1.com, by the way. Ask us anything you like. And we run around the paddock, me and Katie, like headless chickens, finding people to answer the questions that our listeners want us to answer. So we explain anything you like.
Great stuff. And Katie, you've been speaking to Oscar Piastri today as well. What did he have to say?
We talked a little bit with Oscar about F3, F2, and how that process really got him here to F1. And it was really one of those questions where it's understanding the point of those. Because I think they're kind of like this idea. They kind of are out there, they're racing. We see them each and every one of the weekends. But realistically, we don't know as much about them as we want. And so listeners and are coming, letting us know that they want to know a little bit more. And Oscar, what a perfect example of someone
won them both.
who has had that momentum from there to now here in F1, which of course this weekend, there's a lot of momentum behind him.
A lot of momentum behind him. McLaren certainly through the rest of the season. We're expecting to see them leapfrog perhaps Aston Martin in those standings as well. Very briefly then, Christian, obviously we've seen huge growth in the fan base, certainly here in the US as well. And I guess that means you're getting questions from novices, rookies, to those perhaps who are more experienced in the sport as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love my Formula One. I've been watching it since the mid-90s, absolutely adore it. And I learn so much presenting the podcast. There's always something else with Formula One that you've never thought of before. So it's welcoming listeners who are brand new to the sport right through to geeks like me who have been following it for years.
I love it. Katie, where and when can we listen?
Yeah, you can
watch. Can we watch?
Soon.
Tomorrow, if you're here at the track, you can absolutely watch. We have an F1 Explains live show for the first time at 11:30, which is going to be wonderful, and our first time out on the stage together.
Meeting the people.
Yes, with the people. But you can listen to wherever you get your podcasts. Every Friday, there's one that drops. a different question, a different why, and it's really, like you mentioning, learning something each and every one of the times. We really, as people who really love the sport, learn each and every one.
Just search F1 Explains wherever you get your podcasts.
Love that. I think you've said that line a few times, haven't you?
It's called F1 Explains.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
WHY.
At f1.com. Could you say we've said this
Amazing.
before?
Amazing. Yeah, you're brilliant. Thank you both very much. It's brilliant to see you here at a race as well. Thanks, you
Laura.
both.
Thank you, Laura.
To Christian and to Katie. And as mentioned, they spoke to Oscar Piastri. So did we. We can hear from him now in the media pen.
You're the only team this season that has, on merit, in a straight fight, beaten Red Bull.
Yeah, it's an exciting place to be, definitely. I think, there was still certain circumstances in the sprint, with Max getting caught behind the guys on softs and stuff that helped our cause. But I think my main point was that we'd put ourselves in the right position to capitalize on everything. And like you said, their pace was as strong as ever. So it's a very exciting place to be in, that we, in the right circumstances, can deliver, both for me personally and as a team. And yeah, puts us in a really exciting position, mainly going into next year, I think. Of course, everyone's got their eyes half turned to next year already, and we're the same. But yeah, I think there's a real sense of optimism that we can come out strong and hopefully achieve some good things. Thank you.
There is a lot of optimism around McLaren right now. In the last 3 races, they have been the best scoring team in this entire paddock, including Red Bull, on 104 points. Lawrence, is that going to continue here? Do you think they're certainly on an upward trajectory, aren't they?
It's difficult to look at how it can't continue here. Like the way you talk, Lando and Oscar talk, if you talk to Andrea Stella, you talk to anyone within that team, there is so much confidence building. And I think they've got a package that they feel they can exploit even more, and they still haven't learned enough about it to know how fast it can ultimately go. And a lot of the directions they're taking with this package is with an eye on next year. So I think if they continue to make progress this year, specifically here in the last few races this season, that bodes really well for next year. And then we could be talking about them as a genuine challenger to Red Bull.
And they've got 2 very ambitious drivers who undoubtedly are going to be pushing each other and keeping that standard getting higher and higher as well. More news from McLaren this week. Bianca Bustamante has joined their driver development program and will race under the McLaren colours in the F1 Academy through 2024. Will, great news.
Yeah, really good news for her, for McLaren. Obviously, with the F1 Academy, each team will have a representative in that championship next year. So great that McLaren have made that move early. She's a race winner in F1 Academy already. Yeah, promising young talent. So excited to see what she can do. And as Lawrence says, with this team that's moving so quickly forward, I do want to caveat one of the things that he said, though, in talking to Oscar earlier today. The team are a little bit confused at the moment. They don't want to get fully confident for the next few races. Oscar said that if every race from now could be either Japan or Qatar, they'd take it, because those 2 races were like a perfect storm for that car. They're not sure how it's going to be this weekend. Yes, there's confidence, but I think they don't want to get too carried away with just how good those 2 races have been.
Oh, we'll have to wait and see. But if they perform here, there's a lot of optimism to be had through the last 4 races, for sure. Coming on to Ferrari, actually just before Ferrari, don't forget F1 Academy is also here this weekend as well. So it's action-packed from start to finish with the sprint race, of course qualifying tomorrow, the sprint Saturday as well, and F1 Academy. 3 races to follow too in that. We'll be looking at that one very closely for their season finale. Hinch, Ferrari.
Yes.
Look, they're in decent form, and we heard, from Carlos Sainz you were speaking to earlier, weren't you, about the car and the position it's in. Where do you see Ferrari's form coming into the last 5 races?
I think they are in a good place. I mean, I know it's been all McLaren the last few rounds, but kind of to your point, Will, I do think that those 2 circuits...
Thank you so much for coming out for the
You're welcome. I think that those tracks really did suit the McLaren. We look at last year, Carlos Sainz was on pole. Carlos is the only guy that's beaten a Red Bull so far in a race. So I do think this might be a track where it's going to kind of go a little bit more Ferrari's way than McLaren. I think we might see them as the strongest challenger to Red Bull this weekend. That's what I want to see anyway. It's been super impressive what McLaren's done, how massively they've turned that program around. But we don't just want the same team always finishing second. What's been exciting this year is every track, it seems like it's been someone different. Mercedes, Ferrari, Aston. I think this could be a Ferrari weekend.
Oh, that's exciting. And of course, Carlos Sainz was on pole here last year as well. He's, as you say, the only race winner besides Red Bull so far this season. Let's hear from him now.
Hello, Carlos.
Hello.
This is all the Americana that you have going on here. You embrace the culture.
Team and Circuit just gives me things.
and I just like a puppet wear whatever they give me. But yeah, thank you. I like it
Suits
too.
you. It's a good look.
Thank you, Will.
It's a good look.
So kind.
Carlos, 30 points to Fernando Alonso. How keen are you on that target for the season?
Let's say without Qatar, I was thinking I could do it. After Qatar, looks missing a race. You know, it's tough and a lot of points lost there. Yeah, I'll still give it a go. Not with Fernando or Luis or anyone, just for my own sake. Keeping pushing until the end of the year, like I always do. Finish strongly the second half of the seasons, and yeah, especially after a good run of races before Qatar, I just want to go back to that and keep enjoying driving this car.
How much is the car going to change over these last remaining 5 races? Not at all. 0. Well, that could be a good thing. You've got a good baseline. You know where you're at with it.
No, but even if it doesn't change, sometimes you learn more by not changing things and focusing, for example, on trying different setup items that you never get a chance to try because you're always bringing upgrades. And I've done a lot of progress during the season, testing a few things on the car that has given me a bit of an edge in some circuits, and I'll keep doing the same. I'll keep challenging the car myself to make it quicker with the setup items and tools that we have in the car.
And from one sprint weekend to another sprint weekend, do you think this car will suit this circuit, and you've only got an hour to really figure that out?
I'm pretty sure it will be better than Qatar, hopefully a bit better than Suzuka. Not as good as Singapore or Monza, so maybe somewhere in between.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ferrari form, perhaps relatively unknown coming into this weekend, certainly for Carlos Sainz there, but very hopeful, and indeed Hinch pitting them P2 potentially as well. We'll have to wait and see, and of course just 1 hour for practice. This is a sprint weekend, back-to-back with the last time out in Qatar, so we are expecting fireworks galore. Now we move on to Aston Martin, and Hinch, coming to you. For Fernando Alonso, a decent effort last time out, despite his seat burning him at one point due to the heat. But in a sense, an awful weekend for Lance Stroll.
It was, and unfortunately it's been a bit of a theme lately, hasn't it? I mean, you look at where that team was in the Constructors' Championship at the start of the season and how they've sort of fallen down. It's been tough, and one of the biggest issues is that you've only got one car scoring points at the moment. It's been very tough for Lance, not only on Saturdays, but also when they're paying points on Sundays. So Fernando did Fernando things in Qatar. The car wasn't great. We saw him off track a couple times. We know he had the issues with the seat burning him. Still pulled home some points, but if they don't get both cars in Q3, both cars in the points, they're going to keep falling down the Constructors' Championship, and it's a bad look from where they started the season.
Yeah, and look, Aston Martin as well, they're looking likely to be overtaken by McLaren as well, certainly in for 4th spot. It's McLaren firing on all cylinders, best of any team right now. The news also that Aston Martin are changing their name as of 2024 as Cognizant are stepping back as title partner. And on that, Will, if we look down to Alpine, P6 in the constructor standings as well. The news coming into this weekend is pretty supersized, star-studded. Yeah, pretty incredible.
More celebs getting involved with the investor group that's already a part of the team. So sort of more headline names: Rory McIlroy, Patrick Mahomes, loads of
Travis Kelce.
There you go. all of the celebs jumping on the bandwagon. As I talked to Esteban about it earlier today. He's like, it's great for morale in the team, the fact that these great champions believe in us enough that they want their name attached to what we're doing and where we're going. It's great. It has been a disappointing season for Alpine. They expected to be fighting for P3 in the championship this year. They've been nowhere near it. The rate of development that they showed that was so promising last year hasn't been as marked this year. There's been internal politics and all the wrangling that's gone on there. It's been a really messy season for Alpine. So the fact that behind the scenes this is so positive is, I think, giving them something pretty good for the last few races of the season. But yeah, it hasn't been the year that they wanted by any stretch of the imagination.
No, not quite. But despite that, I think the driver's doing a decent job on track as this tannoy continues.
It's great. It's like being in a supermarket around closing time.
There's a lost child in aisle 3. Yeah, we're going to head now to an Albon interview just to allow the pit lane walk to conclude for
Clean
a
up
third
on
time.
aisle 3. How conscious is the team of just how difficult these last 5 races are going to be?
Conscious, of course, but at the same time, nothing we can really do. As in, we don't have any upgrades coming. We knew that when we put the upgrade on in Canada, that was going to be it. So coming into the rest of the year now, it's just trying to be about damage limitation, executing what we can do, getting the most out of our car, and if that's enough to hold on to P7, we'll take it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
and we bid farewell to Lawrence Barretto. He hasn't gone far, he's still watching. So goodbye to you, Lawrence, and we say a very warm welcome to Alex Jakes. How are you doing?
Very well. If there's one thing this show needed, it's more people.
Poor effort.
Where are your
on
shoes,
your
mate?
Shoes.
Unbelievable.
You were a key member of the group, Alex
yes.
Jakes, and you've let us down.
Yes, it's true. I didn't expect to be in the show, so it was a last-minute addition, so I've made absolutely zero effort.
You were in Zandvoort. You did get the memo.
I was at the end of the table, though.
No.
I could just hear a lot of noise.
You're an
You were in the
admin
WhatsApp
group.
You tune it out. Did we get to the bottom of who hid Will's shoe earlier?
Oh, that was some drama before we came on air. Will had lost one shoe.
And
it
that
was
is how
Lawrence
you.
Barretto.
That is how. Was it?
Yeah.
Apparently so.
Barretto. It's always the ones you least expect, eh? Crazy.
Alex, I am told by producer Joe, firstly, that we need to move on, but secondly, that it was no surprise to you that you are on this show. This was always planned, so none of that, please. You are telling falsehoods.
The team is turning against each other in a way I've not seen
this time
before.
of the season, isn't it?
It
5
is,
races
it
to
is.
go.
People are tired.
Should we talk about Williams? Let's do that.
Let's do that.
Alex, I'll come to you first then. I think up and down is how we describe it, but they have been a brilliant story through some races this season, and Alex Albon's certainly one of the standout drivers.
Yeah, he's been carrying the team, though. He scored all the points, and as we come to Logan Sargent's second home race of the year, he needs a breakthrough result, but we're better. He was an FP1 here last year, so he's got run time here. Everyone else is reduced. Maybe this is the time for him to have a breakthrough weekend.
And for Logan Sargent as well, it's amazing to actually look back. He was our co-host on the Prix race show. As you mentioned, he did FP1, and now he's sitting there in this seat, but yet to score points, Will. We are speaking to him in the Prix race show as a feature interview as one of our drivers this time out, but time's ticking, isn't it?
Is it, though? Because what other options have they got? Seriously, short of Checo leaving Red Bull of his own volition at the end of the season and saying, you know what, I know my time's up, I'm going to move on, rather than get dropped halfway through 2024 and suffer that ignominy. Maybe he'd go to Williams and actually provide them with an alternative to Logan, which would be super competitive, and show that actually they are serious about wanting to move up the field. Other than that, who's honestly going to replace Logan? I think he may be flattered into staying in that seat because they don't have any viable alternatives.
We shall see. But Williams under pressure as Alfa Romeo Hinch scored double points last time out. A brilliant result in what was a strategically very difficult race due to the mandated tyre lengths. How do you see them faring here?
Again, sort of like the Ferrari-McLaren conversation, it's a bit of a different circuit, and they were helped out a little bit in Qatar by a raft of penalties from track limits. It wasn't an honest double points. Honest points, I think, for Valtteri certainly. Joe benefited a little bit from other people, but you got to be there, right? You got to not make those mistakes. So they did earn them. It wasn't just the car, though, kind of more the drivers in a sense in that way. So I don't know. The car is looking a little bit sportier, but they think they have to nail absolutely everything in qualifying on Sunday and maybe even benefit from a mistake or two from someone else to get points again. But the car seems to be improving, so it's definitely a possibility.
Track limits were certainly a talking point last time out. We
Too
are
much
expecting
of a talking
them
point.
very much. We're expecting them to be a bit of one here as well. But I do think strategy played its part too. Ruth Buscombe there on the pit wall, and we have a feature interview with her to come this weekend too on just how she got that done, and indeed her role, an exclusive one at that, producer Joe tells me. We'll move to Haas. P8 for them at the moment, and last time out, look, Hulkenberg unlucky with that, with that grid, missing his grid slot at the start of the race.
Bit of a rookie error for a man who's been around for a while, isn't it? But we've seen it in the past. It's easy done. It's because Sainz wasn't on the grid. He didn't take the start, and there was a gap in front of him.
I was talking to the team about it. They were reminding him on the lap, and the last reminder was literally 10 seconds before he pulled into the wrong grid spot. Literally 10 seconds before. Don't park in the wrong grid spot, Nico. No, all right, I've got it, guys. Plop, wrong grid slot.
Oof, okay, and they are, of course, in a bit of battle at the moment for P8 in the championships. It's very, very tight toward the bottom of these standings, and that is just about it. I think the pit lane is finally closed. We've had about 18 announcements to suggest it might be so. It's time to come to the best part of this show, which is predictions, in which we make an absolute fool of ourselves. I'm going to come to you first, Alex Jakes, to do so.
Okay, I'm going to go for Max Verstappen to win.
Whoa.
Then calm yourselves down, and then Lando in second, and Lewis has only ever been off the podium here once, so I'm going to go for him P3.
Nice.
It's pretty much where I was going to go. I think Lewis will look pretty good this weekend, so I'll change it up and go Max, Lewis, Oscar.
I'm going to go Max, Carlos, Lewis or Lando in P3. Lewis.
Okay, Lewis. Okay,
I think.
I'm going to say Max, Carlos,
Say Lando. Do my other one.
Lando.
There you go.
There we go.
That way we
Podium.
got our
There you
bases
go.
covered.
So I got a lot of a noise for saying Max first, and then you all predicted a Max win
That's
after.
how this show works,
yeah,
Alex.
I see.
That's exactly
I
it.
see.
Thank you very much to you, Alex Jakes, to you, Will Buxton, and to Hinch, and to Lawrence Barretto as well. And can I just say a very, very big happy birthday to one of our cameramen today as well, Mr. JP, who is on this camera here.
Happy
This one
birthday,
here. A big happy
buddy.
birthday to you, JP. There he is. Oh, I love that. Brilliant stuff. Let's take a look at the schedule for this a very busy sprint weekend here at the US Grand Prix. Well, here we go, 12:15 we will be on air, building up to free practice 1, and then we'll head into qualifying on Friday. Yes, it's a sprint weekend, I can't wait. 3:30 we will be on air, building up to the all-important qualifying, setting the grid for Sunday's race. Then we head to Saturday, Sprint Saturday, the shootout on air at 12:15 to build up to that one, and our sprint race, the pre-sprint show at 16:20, and of course, reaction afterwards as well. And we move to race day. 12:50, we're on air a little bit earlier for our pre-race show, bumper-sized here in super-sized Texas. And our race, 2 p.m. for the United States Grand Prix. And of course, the post-race show immediately after the podium. Well, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to the lady here making the announcements about the pit lane. Thank you to all of our guests for today's show. We hope you enjoyed, and we will see you tomorrow.